I want to talk about polarizing experiences I've had when it comes to large IT portfolios, and my thoughts on each one. So I'll talk about very complicated portfolios and then very simple ones. So I'll start with the simple one. I was the interim CIO for a manufacturing company, and I was very happy there. Actually, I loved the team. Management was okay, a little bit kind of laissez-faire, not really involved. The CTO was a little um, he was a little absent. I don't even think I ever met the guy in real life. I think we just spoke over the phone or video during my tenure, and he didn't. He was a CTO on paper, but he wasn't really doing anything. I was the CIO and essentially managing CTO responsibilities because he was just focusing on not the manufacturing company, but another sort of subsidiary that was being spun out. So, maybe it's just my interim assignment came while he was preoccupied, but looking at the state of things, I think maybe that new endeavor was not. Uh, I think even before that new subsidiary was being, prepared for its own, independence, I think he was kind of checked out. But anyway, I digress. Um, yeah, I was working at the manufacturing company. I'm the interim CIO, and the portfolio is actually very simple. A lot of business on the front end, on the customer side, is customer payments are like paper checks. Customers are faxing their orders in, or they're calling them in on the phone. The company doesn't have like, I don't think they even had like a real website. It might have had one that they made a long time ago, but I think it was like, you ever see those websites on the bottom? They say 1990 to like 2000, whatever copyright. Like it tells you how long the like it tells you the last time the site was updated essentially, and that's this site was like 10, 15 years old. I think the last time I was updated, I was in high school. So yeah, it was very aged. So on the customer side, there's really nothing. I mean, nothing for business. Salespeople are just calling. The business people are tracking. Everything is being tracked in physical sheets, right? Like all the bookkeeping, payroll, like it's just math on paper and binders. Um, then internally, we had machines that are, producing our products. So you have machines that are, some of them are automated, some of them are being manually operated, and those machines integrate into some applications via PLC, I think, and we have some internal timekeeping applications for people to clock in and clock out for the office workers, while factory workers are actually still just using papers to clock in and clock out. So we have a basic timekeeping application. We do have like a corporate email. We have uh, some we have some internal network infrastructure. We have like an internal network. We have the external guest network. Um, we had a CRM. We had an intranet for employee resources. Again, for the office workers, not like this wasn't for the factory workers. Factory workers was it was really just the machines that we handled. Also, it gets a little bit more complicated. Like they did some 3D design. So if someone was out on the floor and there was like a custom order, they would use a Mac, and there were certain softwares we supported where they would design something and then give those dimensions or design to the machines, and the machines would try to um, create or produce whatever was requested. So it was a, not to say an easy IT portfolio, but it was a pretty basic one. It was a pretty basic one for an interim CIO to have, and that's sort of one of the simpler examples. And um, a lot of some of our stuff was housed on like, you know, we had some Cold Fusion, some COBOL, some AS400. It really was an interesting setup. I never cared that it was legacy. I never cared that it was old tech. I didn't even really mind that it was a small IT portfolio, but I do wish, because there were so many opportunities for there to be more. I mean, for business, for sales, for marketing. I mean, there's for for customers to have an account with us or something online, like, and track previous orders. Like they shouldn't be tracking papers that we send them. Uh, it was never, oh, this is a small portfolio, it's boring to me. It was more, we have a small IT portfolio, and I see so many areas where we could be using technology and helping it grow. Um, but it was just an interim assignment. I wasn't there too long. I was just there because the previous de facto CIO had left, and they were looking for another CIO who replaced me. And he's actually a great guy. We were acquainted. We spoke a few times. I gave him all the info I had, and then handed it off. And from what I know, he's executing pretty well as their CIO. And all's well that ends well. But there are times where a small IT portfolio is not going to be an issue. But when you see your company is sort of not, if only 20% of your company is doing the best that they can do, and 80% is sort of just, I don't want to say wasting time, but there's a lot of potential that isn't being realized. As a CIO who's supposed to be an agent of change, that can be a little frustrating. So that's sort of one side of it, right? Then on the other end, I've enjoyed working in government. I've enjoyed working in healthcare. I've enjoyed working in academia just because there's so many services, so many applications, so many sites. Their portfolios are just massive, just gigantic, almost impossible to manage in some cases, right? It can get really, really difficult. Like you need to have good teams with good communications and procedures in place, like a good structure. But I'll use maybe healthcare as an example, just because I could go on and on about government. It's just so large, and same goes for universities, right? They just so many different departments and majors and sites and student services, and just it goes on. So what I really enjoyed about healthcare is that a lot of hospitals exist to provide services to patients, but if you think, there's no single application that, oh, this is just, use this application for patient care. It gets so deep. I mean, on the patient side, you have to have websites for them to use, especially like if they have a patient portal, and you have to make sure that they're able to access lab results, or you have to make sure they can see their medications, make sure they can see notes or feedback or diagnoses from various doctors. And it gets complicated, right? It gets complicated because you have the hospital like services that are inpatient, then you have hospital services that are outpatient, and then you also have affiliate outpatient clinics. You have affiliated institutes that might still be independent, right? So for example, you might consider a hospital system, care at one hospital versus another. Sometimes you have hospital systems where they're not actually all using Epic, right? They might not all be using the same EHR, EMR. They might not all be using the same system. So while they might fall under the same umbrella, the hospital system might be operating certain hospitals that has their name, but their systems aren't really speaking to each other. So it gets very complicated when it comes to patient portals. And on the back end, every department, every service really has their own stuff happening, right? Like radiology, orthopedics, ER. I mean, when ER sends stuff to radiology, it's not that radiology just logs into like the same application. Like they have their own application that they use for providing care, and all of these different applications, they have to talk to each other. You have applications that the technicians are using, you have applications that the clinicians are using, and there's also the non-technical side of things, right? Or the non-healthcare side. There's also stakeholders who have their own portfolio, where they're managing the hospital, managing budgeting, finances, scheduling, workforce management, HR, marketing, everything. Just there's a lot of healthcare applications. There's a lot of non-healthcare applications that are being used by like stakeholders or the non-healthcare workers. So it looks simple. I don't know why people think Epic is sort of just everything. It does a lot. It has a lot of functionalities, and other EHRs too, right? There's Athena, which I think is sort of more outpatient or something. And there was another one, I forgot his name. And I know a lot of hospitals haven't really adopted them. They have their internal custom applications, so that is also really interesting to work with. I've actually consulted with hospitals where they have so many internal custom secret sauce, softwares that they kind of consult me to see, like, is there any viability in sort of licensing what we have to other hospitals? And I'll see, what is a strategy we can develop to go to market? How can we, develop this properly? How can we get some testing, some feedback, stuff like that, what would it look like basically if you license this out as a professional product, right? How would support look? How would integration look, right? Do you have documentation so they know, how to, troubleshoot stuff like that? How to integrate into their systems if you don't want to provide that service? How can they get everything installed? So healthcare, I found very, very interesting because even if it was just a single hospital or a hospital that's part of a larger system, and these get very interesting. I love hospitals that are teaching hospitals that are also integrated with universities or medical schools, because things get more convoluted, they get more complicated, and I love a challenge. I love when it gets difficult and things become hard to manage. I'm always able to deliver, and there's just always a lot of excitement, especially because in healthcare, maybe this is just me having worked in mainly metro areas, some suburban areas, but I always feel like hospitals are just using as much technology as they can. And I've never felt like I have never run into a hospital that's still doing paper charting. I know that they exist. I've just never seen it. I've never seen them where they're doing paper checks, or they're, everyone's schedule is just, it's written on a clipboard. There's no online scheduling or what have you, or their sick hours or is, again, just recorded on paper on someone's sheet. None of that. They leverage technology appropriately. Same goes for most universities. Same goes for governmental agencies. It's very, very exciting, and those are the sort of portfolios that I enjoy. The ones that are just large, complicated, and just this behemoth versus smaller portfolios that exist only because companies don't want to modernize or change. There's nothing wrong with having a small IT footprint, but it is a problem when for a fact that a company has hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue and they're spending maybe less than $1 million on IT, even though IT is doing what it can to drive production for the company, and there's opportunities to grow from hundreds of millions to billions, and that, but it is what it is.